what is it that really distinguishes us? Why do we build cathedrals and spaceships? Why have we conquered this globe? And I think that it is our capacity to work together, to cooperate. You could even call it survival of the friendliest. Friendliness is really our secret superpower. It was actually the friendliest among us who had the most kids and so had the biggest chance of passing on their genes to the next generation.
I completely agree that our secret superpower is the ability to cooperate in very large numbers. I'm not sure that friendliness is what enables us to cooperate in very large numbers. Friendliness is key for cooperation in small numbers, 10 people, 50 people, 100 people. But when you try to get 1 million people to cooperate, I don't think that the friendliness in us is the key to that. I believe that it's our storytelling capacity. It's the ability to convince millions, sometimes billions of people to believe in the same story. It doesn't even have to be a true story. To put it in a provocative way, I would say that we control the planet and not the chimpanzees, because we believe a lot more fictions, a lot more nonsense than the chimpanzees.
You see that there's very little evidence for warfare for the biggest part of our history, when we were nomadic hunter-gatherers, and that it was really with the moment that we became sedentary and sort of invented civilization that basically everything went downhill. From that moment on, we got hierarchy, we got the patriarchy, we got all these infection diseases like the plague and measles and COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really sort of our original sin, or as Jared Diamond once called it, the biggest mistake in all of human history.
Rutger, let me just push you a bit on that, because you said something quite striking just then. You said the moment we invented civilization that everything started to go downhill.
Yeah.
Do you really believe that? Are you harking back to some kind of nirvana of pre-civilizational living?
Initially, civilization and agriculture were not really good for the vast majority of people. It really meant that you had to basically suffer or, be a slave to some kind of landlord. What is your expression, Yuval? History is what, like 1% of the population has been doing, while 99% of people has been working on the fields. I think that's really important to keep in mind, and that there's quite a lot of evidence that before that, when we lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers, well, life wasn't obviously perfect. And you have, for example, very high child mortality. But if you could choose, between a life as a farmer or as a nomadic forager, I would really choose the latter.
Epidemics started with civilization, but that doesn't really help us to deal with the present crisis, because whatever the solution is to the COVID-19 crisis, going back to living as nomadic hunter-gatherers is not the solution. Who's to blame? I mean, if human nature is basically decent, we are homo papi, we are friendly, so how do you get slavery and genocide and the Nazis and the gulags and all that? Where is the problem?
Well, that's obviously the big question that hangs over my book. One really important thing to point out here is this sort of the dark side of friendliness. We are incredibly groupish. We are incredibly tribal. We just want to be liked. That's maybe the biggest problem of humanity. We just want to be part of a group. We don't want to be alone. And on the one hand, that's our secret superpower because it helps us to cooperate. But sometimes it also really puts us against one another.
I think our main disagreement is not about the nature of individual people. It's about the nature of large-scale societies. You can say that I'm a bit more pessimistic or somewhat more pessimistic, because I think that despite the basic good nature of individuals, when you get to the level of large-scale societies, for much of history it went in a very negative direction. Only in the last 200 years or so do we see real, deep, sustained progress in large-scale human societies. Until, say, the 19th century, you have immense technological development. The power of humankind goes up dramatically, but the conditions of individuals, humans, don't improve. You don't see any clear moral or ethical improvement. So over the long run, the evidence is not very optimistic. As I look to the future, my main fear is, in the 21st century, given the power we have and the challenges we face, we can get it right 9 out of 10 times. If we get it wrong once, that may be the end of us. our margins of error grow slimmer and slimmer. And when I look back in human history, it makes me a bit pessimistic, yes.